Hey, what's party? Welcome back to News Dose, and it sounds like Xbox is going to make some significant changes to their internal studios next week. Now, we actually talked a little bit about this earlier in the week, but there's been some new updates, and now I'm really just kind of hoping that a lot of the things that we're currently hearing is maybe fear-based speculation, which I'll explain that in just a bit, but by this point, there does seem to be a very real possibility that things could get fairly messy next week and potentially even worse than what was originally expected. So we'll get into all of that, but we do have some good news as well today, so make sure to stay tuned. First, though, I do want to thank my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. Thank you just so much for what you do. I truly do appreciate each and every one of you. Let's go and get right into things, though, starting off with the Capcom Spotlight. They held their showcase last night, and I think it was actually a lot of fun. They revealed some new gameplay for Pragmata, and this game is a lot more unique than what you might expect. On the surface, it just kind of looks like an action sci-fi shooter, but there's also this element of real-time puzzles that completely turns it into its own thing. Basically, the android girl that we've seen in the trailers can hack into enemies that exploits their weaknesses. So a pop-up menu will activate, and you have to then quickly solve a puzzle in real time. It's different, it's unique, but I kind of like that aspect to it. One thing that you'll hear me talk a lot about in the channel is a lack of creativity from AAA publishers. So I like when we see new ideas. I mean, will it be a super fun mechanic? Will it be the next big thing? I mean, we have to kind of wait and see about all of that, but it is something different, and who knows? Maybe, just maybe, it could come out and surprise people when it releases next year in 2026. The other big game that they showed, though, was Resident Evil 9, and they dropped some really interesting details about its development. One is that they confirmed the rumor that Resident Evil 9 originally started development as an online open-world game. Thankfully, though, they realized that that's not what fans want, so luckily, they scrapped it. Good decision on their part. Instead, though, they are now fully leaning into the horror aspect of Resident Evil, and maybe even more so than usual, which I hope that's the case. In my opinion, Resident Evil is at its best when it tries to be scary, and from the way that they speak, they want Resident Evil 9 to be a full-on horror game. In fact, they actually mentioned that they originally considered Leon as the main protagonist, but they decided against that because by this point, you know, is he really going to be scared of anything? Probably not. So a fresh new face fits that vibe. Yeah, I'd say a little bit more. Now, that's not to say that Leon won't be in the game. There has been a lot of rumors that he will be, but there is a reason that they decided to go with a new character as the main protagonist. Either which way, though, I do think that Resident Evil 9 looks incredible, and it's easily my most anticipated game. Now, we also got some Nintendo news as they just announced Mario Strikers for Switch Online. It'll release next week on July 3rd, which makes it the first addition to their GameCube library, and it's actually a great addition at that, especially when it comes to its multiplayer, and that's actually one of the things that I really like about their Switch Online catalog. I mean, let's kind of be real about things here. There are better options to play GameCube games if you just care about visuals. Now, I won't mention what these better possibilities are, but the thing that Switch Online has going for it is that, you know, a lot of Nintendo games are fondly remembered for their multiplayer, and Switch Online makes that element easier than ever before with its online functionality. So I think this will be a cool game to play with a friend. Again, it will be out next week on July 3rd. Oh, and we also got an update for FBC Firebreak. Remedy revealed that it hit its first 1 million players, which they're describing as a significant milestone, and I want to highlight that because we get a lot of PR fluff in the industry, and we as gamers need to kind of understand that. Sometimes we do need to understand that PR statements can oversell things, because the reality is that FBC Firebreak was a day one release for both PlayStation Plus and for Xbox Game Pass. Now, I don't know the exact numbers, but the two together probably have north of 50 million users. So to hear that it only has 1 million players for its first week and a half, I don't really view that as overly impressive. In fact, if you look over on Steam database, you'll notice that it only currently has 140 players. So even though they're trying to sell this as a quote-unquote significant milestone, to me, this is really no more significant than the early numbers that we had heard about for Dragon Age the Veilguard last year, which I warned people that was not impressive at the time. Eventually, the truth will come out, and I wouldn't be all that surprised if we eventually hear that FBC Firebreak also failed. And the thing is that I like Remedy. I really do. But I also feel like a lot of these single-player-minded studios are learning the hard way that unlike single-player games that can lean into their stories and their characters a little bit more, when it comes to multiplayer, they completely rely on a gameplay hook. So it has to be truly exceptional to stand out compared to the competition, which there's a lot of competition. And I think that's one of the reasons that we're seeing these AAA single-player studios fail at multiplayer. Now, speaking of single-player games, though, Death Stranding as a franchise really seems to be popping off right now. Death Stranding 2 is currently the #1 bestseller in various regions on the PlayStation stores. But not only that, because we're also seeing a lot of new interest for the first Death Stranding as well. If you look over on Steam, you'll notice that it actually reached a new concurrent peak high. You can see here that it eclipsed 15,000 players this past 24 hours, which, I mean, there's really two different reasons for this. One is because it's currently being sold for $16 thanks to the Steam Summer Sale. If you haven't already played this game, really, it's the perfect time to jump in. But it's also because of Death Stranding 2's glowing reviews. It still has a 90 overall score on Metacritic with more than 100 reviews. So, I mean, we're potentially talking about one of this generation's best games, a possible Game of the Year contender. And I mean, if you believe it, a lot of people are describing Death Stranding 2 as one of Hideo Kojima's best games ever. And hey, that's saying a lot. He's made several all-time greats already, so obviously that's high praise. Now, this is big news, though, because the first game was extremely polarizing, to the point that there was some concern that a sequel wouldn't necessarily sell as well. Here we are, though, and it seems like Death Stranding as a franchise is in a great spot, and really, with that, I just have to say, big congrats to Hideo Kojima and to his studio. His departure from Konami was a big change for him, and to see him rally back with his own studio and his own franchise, as a big fan of his, I love seeing it. Okay, so let's go and talk about what's happening over at Xbox, though, because it sounds like we all need to kind of brace ourselves for some unfortunate and big changes next week. I mean, there's still hope that this won't be as bad as the rumors currently claim, but there are a lot of sources hearing similar things. We're hearing this from multiple well-respected people within the industry, so things aren't looking great. But, you know, this all started earlier in the week when we started to hear about significant Xbox layoffs that are going to happen soon. We talked about this in a previous video, and you might remember that I said I just hope that it won't be as bad as it was last year when they also closed a few studios. Well, unfortunately, it sounds like it very well could be a similar situation. George Broussard over on Twitter said that he's been hearing internal developer level stuff where people at virtually every studio are anxious and worried. Word that potentially entire studios may be shuttered. Expectations are 1,000 to 2,000 people. He said that I think the Xbox unit has about 10,000 people in it, so 10 to 20%. Good luck to all involved. Brutal. Now, some people are questioning that 1,000 to 2,000 number, but again, that's actually very similar to last year's layoffs when they laid off 1,900 employees within their gaming division. Now, the big difference back then, however, was that a large portion of those came from Activision Blizzard because there was some redundancy with the two joining together. So some of that was to be expected, but however, Xbox and Bethesda was also impacted, and they actually ended up shutting down Arcane Austin, the studio behind Redfall, and then the big surprise was Tango Gameworks, which quite literally launched a Game of the Year contender a year prior. So that was a huge surprise at the time. Now, luckily, Krafton acquired them at a later date, thankfully, so, you know, they've since been saved. However, there does seem to be a fear that more Xbox studios could share a similar fate. Now, I will, however, say that this tweet doesn't necessarily elaborate on whether that's fear-based speculation from employees, because, a lot of people are afraid of what's going to happen next, or if it comes from maybe a more high-level source that's letting this get through the grapevine. So my hope is that this is just fear-based speculation. However, we are hearing, at the very least, that studio cuts will potentially be significant. Tom Warren on The Verge posted a report that revealed that Turn 10, the Forza studio, is bracing for cuts as well. And, that's a staple studio for Xbox that dates all the way back to the OG Xbox days. So, yeah, if they're involved, there's a potential chance that most studios will be impacted at least somewhat. Now, Andy Robinson from VGC also responded by saying that he can't confirm any specific details, and he imagines few would be able to, but there's certainly a lot of negative chatter coming out of the UK Xbox studios today. For the sake of employees, I hope details are confirmed swiftly, but I expect this will drag well into next week. And that's the thing about layoffs. This is never a fun thing to talk about, and I can't even imagine what these employees are feeling right now. They're going into the weekend with just this doom and gloom over their heads. It's a terrible situation. I will keep you all updated, though, and hopefully come next week, things won't be as bad as some of the speculation that's currently going around. For everybody over at Xbox right now, though, I wish you all the absolute best. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode. But until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.